had literally just left the East Aurora High School talking to the assistant principal about an increase in violence. And not less than 15 minutes later of leaving that school, I was stopped by the police.
I want to know where you're coming from.
Right.
Because what I saw is what I believe you coming from the 400 block of North Union Street. Okay. Out of a driveway right over there. Out of a driveway that's been involved in shootings.
I didn't come out
recently.
of no driveway. I didn't come out of no driveway.
That's what I saw.
No, you didn't see me driving from no driveway.
The police pulled me over and said it looked like I was coming from a alleged gang house.
What is a gang house?
Let's take a look at a true American story about a person fighting the odds, growing, and giving back to their community. But this time, we're not looking at gang database policing in New York. We're going to Aurora, Illinois. Instead of the other way around, we're following someone taking the city to court. This is the story of the Disciple. He's yet another person fighting against the unfair policing practices inherent in gang database policing, aka Stop and Frisk 2.0.
If you look at the City of Aurora's website for the Special Operations Group, it specifically says we target certain neighborhoods that we believe are in gangs. Once you have been labeled as a gang, your children, your family will always be harassed. You're denied education opportunities because you've been labeled as a gang member. You're constantly going to be harassed in the future if the police run your plates because they put you in that leads database system and it shows that you're in a gang. Then if you get arrested, when you are labeled as a gang, you will be unfairly treated in the court system. So that gang database has 100% allowed the modern day policing to discriminate against anybody that they label in a gang.
To get some further insight on Andy's journey, I've talked to Josmar Trujillo and Vitale of the Policing and Social Justice Project. Their work has been instrumental in advancing the research, advocacy, and foundational community action necessary to ending gang database policing in New York.
We've seen a real pushback across the country to these gang databases, from Chicago to California to New York to even some places down south. And so I saw this as a continuation of a broader movement of folks who are really sick and tired of the way in which young people are being labeled gangbangers and gangsters, in keeping with the kind of super predator myth from the 1990s that was a major driver of the public policies that led us to the problems of mass incarceration.
There's a need for the legal community and the courts to kind of be a place where we have this conversation or have this fight around police officers being able to arbitrarily put people in a secret list. This will hopefully draw more kind of like-minded efforts throughout the country.
If they rule in our favor, then we're going to overturn and throw some real stuff around, because now we have precedent, a ruling, which we already have it from Arizona.
There's another Supreme Court case out of Arizona that says the gang enhancements is unconstitutional.
He's right. In their 2020 decision in the State v. Arabello case, Arizona Supreme Court ruled that ARS Section 13202, which mandates longer sentencing for threatening or intimidating if one is a member of a gang, was unconstitutional. That's because it violated due process rights. In their words, it, quote, enhances criminal penalties based solely on gang status without sufficient nexus between gang membership and the underlying crime.
Chicago versus Morales.
The city of Chicago versus Morales showed that the city was trying to do an ordinance that you can't loiter.
This case, Chicago against Morales, involves a constitutional challenge to that very ordinance.
The city of Chicago alleged that police could arrest those they believed to be gang affiliated for loitering, and the Supreme Court also ruled that this violated due process. However, the key question that persisted throughout this case was, how do they know they're a part of a gang? This is partly due to the precedent set in Lanzetta v. New Jersey.
And in Lanzetta versus New Jersey, it said it's not a crime to be in a gang because being in a gang is a vague word. There's no definition specifically for being in a gang. They've all said the same thing.
But being in a gang is not a crime.
Oftentimes with social justice movements, we draw inspiration and we look for inspiration from other places throughout the country. So even though some of our work is very local, a lot of the work that we started in New York City was fueled or inspired by work that had happened in Chicago.
We filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of all people in the Chicago Police Department's gang database.
Work that had happened in California against gang databases there.
More LAPD officers may be facing criminal charges for allegedly filing false reports that label some innocent people they stopped as gang members.
When organized activists and regular people see other people on the other side of the country or in a far off city having the same struggles, bring up the same issues, it not only kind of reinforces what we're saying, but it also makes us feel like we're connected to something bigger.
He's right. And Andy's suit followed that same model of intercommunity dialogue and influence.
From that lawsuit, I did a FOIA request to ask about this gang database.
And I took that FOIA request and I sent it out to Aurora, Rockford, Peoria, Elgin. Believe it or not, the only city that I had a problem with was my home city, Aurora. Every other city I spoke with either didn't have a gang database, they had removed it, or they had updated it, other than Aurora.
So Andy decided to take them to court, but not without research. And this is when his story takes a turn.
I came across this gang database litigation in Chicago.
His attorneys contend Chicago police falsely put Petrone Salinas in a gang database after he was arrested at 19 for having an unopened can of beer in a Southwest Side gang territory.
He's got no way to challenge that designation, no way to get off of that database. His only option is this federal lawsuit.
A lawsuit against the city of Chicago and the police department.
It was a gang lawsuit filed in Chicago. From August all the way up until January, I started learning about this whole erase to gang database lawsuit. Seeing the press releases, calling around, trying to get a hold to the people that wrote the complaint. I made a couple contacts. Once I got a copy of that complaint, I felt like we should duplicate that movement, erase the database in Aurora. Me being what they've labeled as a former gang member, I knew I had standing because I'm in that database, or at least it's presumed to be in that database. So I typed it up, filed it with the courts, paid my filing fee, and
now with that explained, let's hear more about Andy's backstory.
I was born on 10/10. Yeah, I love that. 10/10, October 10, 1972. My mom and dad separated when I was 2. My dad started dating this white lady. She was German, named Bridget, by the time I was 3. It just was a beautiful thing for me growing up. I didn't feel like it back then, but now I can look back and say, you know, had it not been for her, had it not been for my father, the neighbors that I had in my neighborhood, you know, I would not have been who I am today. They split up, and from them splitting up, I got involved in the gang life, the street life. And there's nothing wrong, again, with hanging out in the streets. I was never in the street organization and told to go do anything. Everything I did, I chose to do it. I didn't get jumped in. I was guilty by association. My block was not full of quote unquote gang members. There wasn't any on my block. I was the one.
And then about 95, the Ghetto Boys came out with this CD called Ghetto Boys Resurrection. And Larry Hoover was on there. And he was talking about, you know, what y'all brothers got to do is put down them guns and pick up these ballots.
You know, right. You know, you can kill as many niggas you want as long as you don't go to the polls. Right. But if you go to the polls, they're going to snatch you off the streets, you know. If we don't do nothing about this stuff, in a minute, shit, we had the point of no return.
This blueprint from Gangster Disciple to Growth and Development, I started reading it. It was just in literature that I got from one of the elders. And I was like, you know what, I ain't with this dope life no more, you know? Because the stuff I was reading was making sense to me, that I was creating the problem in my community.
You know, for a long time, people in communities that are experiencing violence have been self-organizing to try to address the needs of their communities and to intervene into the lives of these young people at risk of involvement in violence, whether as victims or offenders. And for years, these programs were run kind of on a shoestring generally by older guys who had returned from prison and who had themselves been involved in street life and maybe even violent activity, and were in a place to talk to young people from a position of mutual understanding and respect, rather than the kinds of threats, coercion, and finger wagging that we get from police and elected officials.
Gangs can be positive. It just has to be organized, and it has to steer away from being self-destructive to being self-productive.
I just watched, the evolution of seeing a different part of what I thought was like a gang being in a negative aspect to seeing it being in a more positive political movement, but that growth and development, that blueprint, it woke me up, like I began to get conscious.
Anytime I hear of anyone who's formerly incarcerated that is able to come back and try to make change in their community, that's to me the ultimate American story for me. Not American in the way that we see traditionally, but someone who's faced turbulent times, has been able to pick themselves from that and turn that into something that's bigger than themselves.
That leaves us with one more question. What can ordinary people do to support this movement?
So we need to stop labeling these young people gang members, and we need to stop treating their behavior as criminal and instead treat it as, a demand for more inclusion in the mainstream of American society, and create the kinds of institutional infrastructures that would be necessary to do that.
Gangs as being a way for police to separate and divide people. The label is a way to say to somebody that person is deserving of the worst treatment. That person is deserving of police brutality or police surveillance, and they are the other, they are the bad people, and I'm not part of that. This person is part of your community. Whether that person needs more resources or needs ways to better themselves or get employment or do whatever that they need.
And Andy has an even more specific call to action. Start your own lawsuit where you are.
So right now, what they can do to support this movement is form a group at least 3 or 4. One that can do the research, one that can do the writing, and one that can represent. And if it's all 3 the same person, great. In each community, each city, each county, each state, what we want to do is identify any legislation, any ordinance, any statutes that use the word gang to discriminate, harass, and oppress people. Put that suit against that city, county, or state and declare these statutes, laws, ordinances, legislation are all unconstitutional.
And he's not just using the suit to get justice in Aurora, but to bring attention to this issue on a national stage.
And I think this is what is important and clever about the use of this to kind of raise the issue, use the lawsuits to raise the issue, is that the public will be made aware that these are legally dubious, methods and tactics, and so that the public will start to question things.
I learned how to file this lawsuit. So now I'm sharing it with Georgia. I'm sharing it with Virginia. I'm looking to share it with the brothers and sisters in New York. If we can't find a lawyer, if the ACLU does not have enough staff members to assist us in what we're doing, let each one teach one and share that experience. Here, fill in the blanks. Do it like this. And that way we can have a movement that's powered by the people, because we the people. That is how we can make the change that we need to see. Each one, teach one.